The church we are talking about tonight is the church at Pergamos, and that would be Revelation chapter 2, verse 12 through 17. And here we go. You can pronounce this word Pergamos, Pergamum, Pergamos, Pergamon, Pergamos, Pergamum. It's the same thing, and it means marriage. For some reason, some people say it means parchment. I don't understand why it would mean parchment. I was forced to do this portion here to set a time period. And the time period for this church is around 3:13 to 6:06. Some people will have it 2:58 to 5:58. So this is a round number from the year 313 to 606 AD. And I would use this time period because of what was happening in Rome at that time. The description of Christ, Revelation chapter 2, verse 12. These things said he which had the sharp sword with two edges. Now, we saw in Revelation chapter 1, verse 16, that when John was describing what he saw, he said he saw a sharp sword with two edges coming out of the mouth of the Lord. However, I don't see the Lord walking around with a sharp sword projecting out of his mouth. However, what it means is Hebrews chapter 12, 4 verse 12, for the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. So they are talking about the power of his word when they talk about a sword proceeding out of his mouth with two edges. Now, the word of God is so sharp that it could divide asunder the soul and the spirit. We have problems figuring out which is soul, which is spirit, but the word of God is so sharp that it can divide the soul from the spirit. It can divide the joints from the marrow. It is a discerner of the thought and the intent of the heart. You see, we think of something and then we intend it in our heart. The word of God is so powerful that it divides asunder the thought and the intent of the heart. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the Lord having a sharp sword proceeding out of his mouth. Again, Revelation chapter 2, verse 12, I know thy works. And I will give you an assignment to read Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. And I am going to look at thy works or your works from a different point of view tonight. So here we go. In Matthew chapter 25, the Lord talks about the good man of the house was going on a journey, and he called his servants together, and he gave one of them 5 talents. That's this guy here. And he gave another one 2 talents, and he gave one 1 talent. And he just jumped on his horse and he went his way. Now, this is another way of looking at your works. And when you look at the guy who got 5 talents, you look at the guy who got 2 talents, you look at the guy, 2 talents, the guy who got 1 talent, I am telling you, all 3 of them receive 100% of their ability. So the guy with the 5 talent, although he got 5 talents, that is equivalent to 100%. The guy with 1 talent, that is equivalent to 100%. And I would like to use an example of 3 modern day evangelists that we all probably heard of sometime or the other. Let's talk about Dr. Billy Graham. He is said to be one of the greatest evangelists that ever lived. He was one of the people who talked to between 1 million and 3 million people face to face at one time. He has what you call the Samaritan's Purse, and they do work, good works throughout the world. They were in Haiti, they were in Syria, they were in New York for the pandemic, and they set up a portable hospital and they took care of people. And that is the Billy Graham ministry. Now, when you look at what Billy Graham did compared to what we are doing, we will say, wow, we could never meet this guy the work that he is doing. So then we have T.L. Osborne. He's my favorite. I followed his ministry since I was 14 years old till he died a couple of years ago. He founded 250,000 churches on the face of the earth. He only preached 200, 300, maybe 400,000 people at one time. And he never had a stadium. He had a big soccer field or a big empty space of land. You walk in there with your little bag and you sit down on the grass and he will preach to you. But he founded 250,000 churches. Today, he has 4 generations of his grandchildren preaching the gospel. And then we have this guy, Jesse Duplantis. He said he have an audience of 19 million people. I don't know if it's a month, if it's a year, if it's a week, but he have 19 million people in his services, which is via satellite, computer, whatever. And they all 3 did mighty things that we might never ever be able to do. How would God judge those guys? Well, really, that is not our business. You know, God got to deal with them the way he sees. But they all did works. And we could never meet up to them, but they have their job to do. T.L. Osborne had his job to do. He wouldn't tell you how many times he was in prison. He wouldn't tell you how many times he lost every penny. And with Billy Graham, he was in Korea. And this Korean pastor, he said he had a big church of 5,000 people, or at least that's what he thought. After Billy Graham left, his church membership went up to 25,000 people. So they all did great works. However, they all did 100% of what they're supposed to do. What am I saying? You will never reach that level. I would never reach that level. You might be a prayer warrior. You might be an intercessor. You might be in your bedroom, kneeling down, praying by yourself. And you might never see the results of your prayers, but your prayers are being answered. Or you might be somebody who collecting clothes and giving to the poor. Or you might be somebody who collecting a food basket and sharing with people. Or you might be helping people with money. And that is your 100%. That is what God expects from you according to your ability. And you could either invest that talent that the Lord gave you, or you can do like this guy. The one talent the Lord gave him, he buried it. And whatever you do, although you are not recognized for it like Billy Graham or Jesse Duplantis or T.L. Osborne, you are not recognized maybe in the church or in the village, but Jesus is saying tonight, I know your works. Whatever little it is, and you remember the first day we talked about that, we were talking about giving a cup of water in the name of the Lord. That's what we were talking about. There's where you start. You don't make the water, you don't make the cup. You just give somebody water in the name of the Lord, and he records that. Now, like we see in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 20, the books were open. So everything you do for the Lord is recorded. Now, remember in our discussion, we also said everybody, whether saved or unsaved, they will have to give account of their works, regardless. they would have to give an account of their works. So tonight, this is another angle that I'm looking at when Jesus said, I know your works. Let's go on. He said, I know thy works. I know where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. The first underlined part, and where thou dwellest. In other words, the Lord is saying, I know your works. I know what you're doing in private. I know what you're doing in secret. I know how you're helping your neighbor or your friend or the beggar or whatever you are doing in my name. I know what you are doing, but I also know where you live. I know where you dwell. What does that mean? He knows that you might be the only person in your family who is saved. He knows your situation. He knows that you might be the only one in the school cafeteria who bow your head and say grace before meal. He knows that you might be the only Christian on work and you're not sharing the dirty jokes with everybody else. He knows your situation. And when you study these books, you can see the Lord being so personal with us. He is telling us, hey, I know your situation. You know, I don't know if this still happens, but when we were growing up, we know of people who on a Friday evening, they were scared to be home. When they hear that their dad is coming home, they have to run by the neighbor and spend the night because their father is coming home drunk. And you will hear stories about that over and over. He knows that situation that you are in. He knows the problems you get at home because you are the only Christian in the house. Okay? He knows your situation. I know where you dwell. And although you dwell in that situation, he said, you hold as fast my name. He said, you have not denied my faith. So he is walking in the midst of his people. He's walking in the midst of the church, and he knows your situation. You might be discouraged, you might be happy, you might be sad, you might have a problem. Jesus is telling you tonight, I know your situation. I know where you dwell. Then he said, even where Satan's seat is. And then he talked about Antipas, his faithful servant. Now look at the other side of that story. He said, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. So hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. So on one side, and I put this two side by side for a reason, it's like he is talking to two groups of people in the same church. It is one church, the church at Pergamos. All right. But on one side, you have faithful people, people holding his name, people not denying his faith. And on the other hand, he has people who have the doctrine of Balaam and the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. So this church is like a divided church, if you want to put it that way. But there are two sets of people in this church. And we will be dealing with this other set of people. Now this here is a picture of the seat of Satan. This is the altar of Zeus that was built in Pergamos. And we will, I'm trying to show you a video on this seat of Satan. So let me see if I could get this thing going. God help. I guess it's not working. I uploaded this evening and it's not working. However, in Pergamos, they built this seat of Satan, and this was dedicated to Zeus. And on this altar, they had a bull made out of brass. And what they would do is they would put people inside of the bull, and they would light a big fire under the altar, and they would roast the participant. They would roast the participant to death. Unfortunately, that video don't work. I would try and get it done for you next week. And then there was another temple where they would heal. They would heal people. And in this temple, there was a sign outside the temple where they would say, no deaths allowed. If you had a terminal disease, you cannot go to that temple. So first of all, they know that your disease could be healed. And when you go to that temple, they would give you a sedative so that you would drink it, and then you would fall asleep on the floor. And during the night, they would have harmless snakes crawl over your body. And if a snake were to crawl over your body, they would say that that is the God reaching out to you. And you would explain to the priest the next day what happened during the night, or where did the snake rest on your body. And then that is the part of your body that needs to be healed. The amazing thing about that was this guy named Antipas, who was the bishop of Pergamos at the time, and it is said that the demons complained to the priest that Antipas was casting out too many of them, and they had to leave. So the priest asked the emperor if they could kill Antipas, and they brought Antipas to the throne of Satan, and they tied him up in such a way that they put him in the bowl, and they light the fire under him, and that's how Antipas became the faithful martyr. So unfortunately, I've been trying for a month to get that thing working, and it didn't. Sorry. So let's go on. Condemnation. I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam. And we discussed that earlier. We will get more into that. And also they had the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. And then we saw in Revelation chapter 2, verse 6, that the deeds of the Nicolaitans was already existing in the church of Ephesus. So this was way before the church of Pergamos. Now you got to remember that the devil himself, he don't die, demons don't die, and they instigated this doctrine of the Nicolaitans early in the church. In Acts chapter 6, verse 5, there was this guy by the name of Nicholas. He was an elder in the church, and the deed of the Nicolaitans started from there. So two problems this church had. They had the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, to commit fornication. And the New Testament talk about Balaam in two verses. Peter, in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 15, which have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor. So, which have forsaken the right way. That means the way of Balaam is definitely the wrong way. They have gone astray. That means the way of Balaam is definitely the wrong way. Now look what Jude verse 11. For they have gone in the way of Cain, run greedily for rewards. This is what happened with Balaam. He went after the way of Cain. He ran greedily for rewards. This is called the error of Balaam. So Balaam is referred to twice in the New Testament. And then again, we're going to talk about the deed of the Nicolaitans. So let's talk about Balaam for a minute. Now, there are two characters. Balak, the king of Moab, the Moabites, that is Jordan. He was afraid of the Israelites. He was so afraid of the Israelites that Moab was distressed, the Bible said. He was quaking in his boots because of the Israelites. Now, the Israelites, they camp in the valley of Moab, and the king Balak, he said that they covered the whole earth. There were so many Israelites that they covered the whole earth. And the reason why there were so many is because there was like 2 million people came out of Egypt, and they were at the border of Canaan. And the Balak, the king of the Moabites, he heard probably what they did with Jericho. He heard what they did with the Amorites. So he was scared. He was afraid of the Israelites. All right, give me a second. Here we go. The next character we have is the prophet Balaam. A lot of people give him a bad rap. They say he was a false prophet, but I don't think he was a false prophet. Balaam was a prophet of the Most High God. So we have two characters here. You find this story in Numbers chapter 22. And you have Balak, who is the king of the Moabites. You have Balaam, who is a prophet of the Most High God. Now Balak, hired Balaam to curse the children of Israel. And the fact that the king Balak hired Balaam, it means that he had a reputation. The king himself knew who Balaam was. And the King Balak said in Numbers chapter 22 that whom he blesseth is blessed, and who he curseth is cursed. So Balaam, he had a good reputation. For the king to send for him, that had to be a great thing. All right. So he turned bad, but he was a good prophet. He refused to go with them at first. He refused to go with them. And then later on, he changed his mind. So he decided, okay, I'll go. And on his way there, when you read the story, you would see where the Lord got angry with him for going with the people who Balak sent. Balak sent some princes, and Balak gave them money to give Balaam, and he gave him a lot of riches to give to Balaam. So they was going to give him a reward. On the way to King Balak, he encountered a problem because the angel of the Lord was standing in the way, and the angel of the Lord was going to kill him because he was going to meet the king of the Moabites. And his donkey saw that. And the donkey tried to get away from the angel. And then there was a little problem there where Balaam started to beat his donkey. And the donkey turned around and said, hey, why are you hitting me? What did I do to you? And that was the encounter that he had until the Lord opened his eyes and he saw the angel of the Lord. And the donkey said, did I ever do you wrong since you became my boss? Did I ever do you anything wrong? So they had a conversation. Anyhow, he went, and Balak, the king of the Moabites, promised him, I will promote thee with great honor. I pray thee, curse these people. So the king of Moab hired Balaam to curse the children of Israel. And what Balaam did was he knew that the Lord delights in burnt offerings. So he told the king of Moab, he said, I tell you what to do. You build 7 altars, and you get 7 bullocks, and get 7 rams, and we're going to offer this to the Lord. We will get him. So they built the 7 altars, and they offered the sacrifice to the Lord. And Balaam told Balak, he said, you stay here, let me go and talk to the big man. Let me go and talk to the Lord. So he went to talk to the Lord tell him what to say. He came back and he said exactly what the Lord said, and he blessed Israel. He couldn't curse them. And then he went back again, and the king showed him another spot. He said, look at these people. So he said, okay, we're going to build 7 altars, and we repeat the same thing. He gives 7 burnt offering. He went to talk to the Lord, and the Lord tell him, bless the children of Israel. He did it a 3rd time. Now, pay attention. He purposely disobeyed the Lord. He purposed in his heart that he want to curse the children of Israel. And he was a great guy. He used to fall in a trance, and his eyes would be open, and he would prophesy. And whatever he prophesied will come to pass. So it didn't work. Balaam said, he said, if Balak give me a house full of gold and silver, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord. Whatever the Lord tell me to say, that is what I would have to say. So he had good intentions, but I think he was looking at the silver and gold more than anything else. All right. And he tried to curse the children of Israel 3 times, but his word turned into blessings. Now check this verse. Numbers chapter 24, verse 11. This is Balak, the king, talking. He said, I thought to promote thee unto great honor. But you know what? The Lord prevented it. The Lord don't want you to have that great honor. So I just can't give you the honor. So at the end of Numbers chapter 24, verse 25, and Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place, and Balak went to his place. Now, in any story, the next line will be, and they live happily ever after. All right? He tried to curse the Israelites. It didn't work, and they went home. End of story. But then look at Numbers chapter 25. The people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. That is Numbers chapter 25, verse 1, the next chapter. The people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. That they left out a lot of information there. It just didn't happen like that. They didn't just say, I am going into Moab and just commit whoredom with everybody. It didn't just happen like that. I think the daughters of Moab, they started dressed with short skirts, and they started to fix the hair, and they started to wear jewelry, and they started walking around the guys. And when the guys saw that, they said, oh, that looked good. Okay, so they enticed the young men. All that would happen between Numbers 24 and 25. They didn't just go in and commit whoredom. Those girls' skirts were so short up to the ankle. You know, that's they started to provoke the young men, and then they started to commit whoredom. That's the beginning. All right. And then when they became familiar with each other, they said, hey, you know what's happening? This Friday we having prayers. I want you to come over. So the people from Israel, they went over to the prayers. Now you will notice a seduction taking place here. And when they went to the prayers, they started to eat the food. They eat prayers food. So first of all, they enticed them to whoredom. Then they enticed them to come and and join in the sacrifice. And then they entice them to come and eat the food. And then when the plate pass around, they do the little thing over the head. So then they join in the worship. Now this is a seduction taking place here. Numbers chapter 25. And look what the other verse said. And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor. So it was a seduction taking place. And I challenge any one of you to go on YouTube and look for testimonies of former demon worshippers. And they will tell you this is the example that they use today. They will go in the clubs and they would look for the guy who nobody is talking to. They will have a drink with him. They will invite him to orgies and free sex. And that is where it starts. Okay. Now they say the people did eat. Do you know what they were eating? You wouldn't believe this. Look at Psalms chapter 106, verse 28. They eat the dead. They were eating the babies that were sacrificed to Baal. And if you type in child sacrifice in the Bible, you are going to see so many verses on the Canaanites and the other nations. The reason why God didn't want them to get involved with these people is they were killing their children and eating them. So that is what they were eating when they offer sacrifices. Now look at the results. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. That was the goal from Numbers chapter 22, that God will be angry with the children of Israel. So I wonder who was behind this. Through the counsel of Balaam. Remember in Numbers chapter 24, verse 1, we thought we went home. They went home. Balak went his way. Balaam went his way, but no. Numbers chapter 31, verse 16. Through the counsel of Balaam, they committed trespass against the Lord. Remember now what Balak, the king of Moab, consulted and what Balaam answered him. All right. So what was going on? They had a secret meeting and Balaam told Balak that you cannot curse the Israelites directly. But this is how we're going to get them. And the results of this that took place, 24,000 Israelis were killed that day by a plague. 24,000 was killed. And the people were so bold that the Israelites, they stood in front of the tabernacle, the entrance to the tabernacle, and they were weeping and praying to God for forgiveness. And one of the princes of Israel was flaunting his new girlfriend, who was a Moabite. And they were walking by in front of Moses while the people was crying. And this is so much disrespect when I see this. And there was this guy by the name of Phinehas. Phinehas was the son of Eleazar, who was the son of Aaron. So he was a priest. When he saw the young man walking around with his new girlfriend, he got angry. And he took a javel. He took a javel and he chased the guy and the girl to their tent. And he sent the javel straight through their stomach and killed both of them. And when he did that, that is how the anger of the Lord was calmed down because of what Phinehas did. All right. So all of this that took place because of Balaam. Let's go on. So hast thou them also the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. Now we said this is the period between 313 to 606. And in Revelation chapter 2, verse 6, the Lord talked about the deed of the Nicolaitans. Now in Ephesus, we were talking about AD 33. The church was like 25 years old when the deeds of the Nicolaitans was already in the church. All right, that was already taking place in the church in 33 AD. The church was 25 years old. In 52 AD, the church was 25 years old. 300 years later, the same problem persisted, because you see, the devil don't die, Satans don't die, demons don't die. So that was a demonic seed that was planted in the church, and it came to harvest in 313 to 606 AD. The Bible never tells us what is the deed of the Nicolaitans. We don't know what is the deed of the Nicolaitans from the Bible. They say Nicholas, he was an apostolite from Antioch, Acts chapter 6, verse 5. He was one of the elders that was selected to take care of the people. He was a pagan. He was converted to Judaism, and then he was converted to Christianity. And he had some thoughts. And his thought was that the law is done away with. The law is of no effect anymore. Now, how we know that is, let us do a little church history. Apostle John, he was from 6 to 120 AD. Polycarp was from 70 to 155 AD. He was the bishop of Smyrna. So Polycarp, he knew John. And then we have Irenaeus. Irenaeus, he was from 125 to 202. He didn't know John, but he knew Polycarp. He was born in Smyrna. Now Irenaeus is the one who said that this thing started with Nicholas in Acts chapter 6, verse 5. And he said that let me see where I am. All right. He said that they believe that the law is done away with, and we have all this grace, so we can sin in the flesh and it does not affect our spirit. So because of grace, we are not saved from sin, but we are saved to sin. This is what the deed of the Nicolaitans were. And this was told us by Irenaeus, who lived after Polycarp. All right, that is all the information we have on the deed of the Nicolaitans. So the law, they believe the law is done away with, and we are so full of grace that we could sin and it's okay because we have grace from God. All right, this is what we are talking about. The law is done away